Okay, we are now recording. For anyone coming to this later, welcome to the April 6th, 2021 GitOpsCon CFP committee meeting, the first one in this series. And we are joined by the lovely people here. For transparency, there inside of the GitOps working group meetings on today's meeting notes, there's a link to a GitHub issue. So if anyone wants to find out how people got on this call and how you can get on the next one and what you can do in between, that's the place to go. So we have an agenda. Does everybody have links to the agenda and know that you can add stuff to it?
Yeah, I'm gonna paste it in case, that way it's handy for other people.
Great. And then, so I guess I'll just go ahead and, since I put my thing on there first, I'll go ahead. Really just wanted to point folks to this committee tracking issue that Christian made. It's fairly straightforward. It's just making sure that there's some transparency as to, who's doing what and how that's working. So please comment on there if you haven't. I think Shlomo, there's still like an open item for, actually, I'm sorry, Christian, when you say check mark means confirmed, does that mean that it's confirmed by the group?
Oh yeah, so let me confirm being part of the committee. So there was a lot of people that said that they want to take a part, and
well, I can't check box.
So I will.
Yeah, just leave a comment if you don't mind, Shlomo, or actually this is fine. You're talking now, so.
You leave a comment, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And then I'll reach out. I'll reach out to Tana. Great. I didn't really have anything to speak to really about this, except for just trying to make sure that, we do have that project board for helping us to organize things. I hope it's useful for people. If you think we should change it up, totally change it up. And anyway, but that's just housekeeping stuff. So I guess I'll just wait till anyone has ideas on their own about that. And yeah. I think, yeah.
Well, and a little bit more housekeeping. Me and Scott figured out that if you're going to use a project board, it's actually easier to create an issue and use that as the card, because we were doing it another way before. It's fine if you're just putting in cards just like to jot down your ideas, but eventually, we found it easier to retroactively go and create an issue and then make that the actual thing that you're tracking in the project. So
just as a note, just in case you don't know, there is a way, like, you can click the little 3 dots in the card, whatever the name is, and convert that to an issue, so you don't have to kind of like recreate anything. Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yes,
Felipe, I'm adding you to the list of committee members. There we go.
Oh, I have another housekeeping thing, but I can put mine out at the end if we want to keep going in order, or should I just keep blabbing away?
Just keep blabbing.
All right. The other thing is I'll write it down. Is Keybase. To set up a Keybase team to help with things that we need to help with so far. Shlomo, I saw that you pinged me on Keybase, and I'll add you to that today.
Well, the joke is I got Keybase when it was young, and I've never ever used it before.
It's changed a lot since then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Finally, some use.
In short, for those that don't have accounts, it's the most important thing to keep in mind is that the why even bother? I mean, I could just pull up the XKCD chat systems comic and we can all have a laugh at, like, how many different systems we are thinking about using. The only reason I suggest using Keybase is is not to replace everything that we have. We have a Slack channel. We have GitHub. We have project board, things like that. It's really, for right now, it's really only in case there's any information that's sensitive. That's it. So before we have an open source 1Password account, which we'll get pretty soon, there's a technique to encrypt files there and do file sharing. And it can be on a team basis. So I have I'll post it again, but I have a good GitHub gist that shows how to do that. I set it up for the Helm team. And that's what we've been using for certain types of files, you know. Yeah. The only other thing is to know if the main value that Keybase brings is it helps to reduce the possibility that someone can get a hold of something important. So its main value proposition is being able to know that you can trust a person, to have greater and greater levels of trust, to know that a person is actually who they say they are, not some man in the middle or third party thing.
Oh, I wasn't questioning Keybase.
Oh, I didn't think you were.
It was more like, oh wow, finally a use.
I finally get to use
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is just info for anyone either listening in or like on the call who doesn't have an account yet. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that if you do need to make an account still, it's best not to put an organization name or anything like that in there. Keybase primarily, not just frowns upon, but really its whole value proposition is that you have one account, that you prove you are who you are. So just make it you, and yeah, please put in that issue and I'll add you to the team.
I unfortunately have to voice one thought, and please don't be upset about it. I think since we all have a Google account, in addition to the Keybase account, I think the quality of the Google identity is good enough for everything we do. So I think it would be also good enough to share passwords.
You mean Google
Drive or whatever.
Google Drive? The reason I suggest against that is it's known to cause problems, specifically in cases where you're doing demos. Yeah, I mean, no one else should be able to get in there without Google's IAM, but it comes right up in search. You're doing a demo and all of a sudden like your keys for this like whole shared team show up, and now everybody has to rotate our keys. It's a pretty, I mean, if you wanted to put like, say, a PGP encrypted file in there, that would be one thing. I'm not trying to be like insane here about this, but I'm just.
You mean the visibility is there's too much visibility, like accidental visibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the known security risk. Not that there's, you know, some like way in, just
That's an interesting thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
But again, if you
Cool.
PGP encrypt it, no problem. The only reason I suggest Keybase is because it specifically does that for you on a per team basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Scott. Yeah, for those housekeeping things here. So I leaned on Scott to try to like put all this together, because the CFP is closing soon, right? Next Friday, and then we don't have that much time to make decisions, because there's only 2 weeks until the event after it closes. So we actually, we need to start like doing some of the stuff. We actually need to do it like in a few days, right? So
Right.
I wanted to get like this meeting this week and next week to go over the criteria. So I think Leo put together a good draft, by the way. Thanks, Leo, for doing that, because this is my first time doing this here. And so it's linked in the agenda doc, but let me also link it here in the chat for everyone else to see.
Do you want to share your screen, perhaps?
Yeah, I was
Justin?
I was thinking about doing that. Thank you. I think it's this one. Can you guys see my screen?
I took the liberty to start preparing a spreadsheet, which will help us with the work. Get the process going.
So yeah, so if you have a link of that, if you can drop that in the chat, or in the doc actually? Maybe.
It's next to the form responses.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because obviously it has to be linked to use the data. So I suggest we don't mess with the form responses, but they have some sort of a working sheet.
And jumping just real quick on an item that I added to the agenda. Everybody on this call has access to the form responses, right? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
It's in the chat.
So does anyone have thoughts on the guidelines? So this was, I think, Leo, you took this.
Yeah.
From the,
So this
CNCF?
is basically a kind of like a distilled version, much more to the point, based off of the CNCF guidelines. And basically, there's kind of like a handful of concepts that are relevant, I think. The fact that there has to be some level of control in terms of conflict of interest. So it's very broad in the context of just like, if you work with the person that submitted, if you work closely with the person that submitted the proposal, or it's kind of like there's some personal relation, you can't participate in that evaluation. Then the other one was the fact that kind of like this grading mechanism of 1 to 5, poor to excellent, that I just kind of copied over. And the concept of categories, right? That there will be multiple categories that would be evaluated. So I those are not verbatim what's in the CNCF. They're kind of like a little bit of an interpretation of my own and what I think we should go for. And then I added something that was not in the CNCF exactly, and it's kind of like the mechanism to effectively average all those different scores, because kind of like what I have in mind is we evaluate each one independently. We assign a score for each one of those categories, and we basically average those 4 scores into a kind of global CFP value. We basically order them descendingly on global value and evaluate on broader criteria, right? Like, is there a lot of redundancy in subjects across the top selections, right? I think we also should have a sense of what is going to be happening at KubeCon, because we don't want to have like the same talk in GitOpsCon that something is going to be showing in KubeCon the day after. Do you know what I'm saying?
We're not asking for that, actually.
I kind of disagree with that. I think if people want to do both, fine.
But what I'm saying is, you're saying that if it's the exact or very similar content, we don't mind?
Actually, I disagree. I think for stuff that's gonna show on KubeCon, like accepted KubeCon talks, I would limit at most to a slot in the lightning talks. There's a kind of teaser preview summary of the long talk in KubeCon, because everybody who's in our 0 day will be also at KubeCon. And I think we should give a chance to the people who have to say something very much about GitOps, which is maybe also not Kubernetes related, and also a chance to people who didn't get into KubeCon with their talk, maybe because it wasn't Kubernetes related.
I'd like to hear Chris's finished thought, because I think there was more information.
I think that's reasonable, right? Like rack and stack them priority wise if they're at KubeCon, right? Like bottom of the list kind of deal. I think that's reasonable, but I would not like just say flat out like, oh, you got accepted to KubeCon. No, we're not going to have you, because it's very easy to do the same talk 2 different ways, in my opinion.
Okay.
As a professional speaker, right?
I tend to agree with both those points. I think they should have lower priority, but not flat out say no. That's my my first instinct is to be like, okay, like we should give original talks and things specific to GitOps for the ones that we like first, right? And then like if we need to fill out space, right? Maybe we won't have this problem, but if we need to fill out space, then we can like do like a lightning talk or have those talks be lower on the priority.
I
don't know
agree.
if anyone-
Just to be clear, I don't think kind of what I was implying is not saying no to any talk that has overlap, but that it has to be, or that I would suggest it is a component that is incorporated in the decision process, right? It's that we should be mindful of what is going to be presented afterwards, not just what is going to be presented in the 0 day to some degree, I guess.
So do you want to add that into the selection guidelines in a more explicit way?
I think it's there because I added is the committee will select from the highest ranking proposals by evaluating the following criteria. Is the variety of subjects and expertise levels balanced for the event? So kind of like what I'm saying there is we want to make sure that for GitOpsCon there is the stuff for beginners, there's kind of like entry level stuff, more advanced things. There's ideally a balanced variety, and that there are no major overlaps or duplication with talks that are going to be presented in KubeCon and the KubeCon event. I don't know if that's a faithful way to word what we're talking about. So I'm all open for.
Maybe we said we wanted to say give lower priority.
Yeah.
You know, not that there will be none.
Right. Just say, if you already have an accepted talk at KubeCon, this would be another accepted talk at KubeCon, like share the wealth kind of thing.
Yeah. So here maybe.
But I will point out that we only have 8 submissions right now.
Right.
Right. Like we probably shouldn't think about this much. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we can think about it as long as we want, but like, let's use our time more wisely at this point.
Can solve the problem when it's on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we will get a hockey stick at the end for sure, but I agree. And I skimmed them and they're not overly impressive yet. So
yeah. So let's I'd like to maybe go line by line here. So here it says each proposal must be reviewed by a minimum of 3 members of the review committee. So are we thinking, so I'm wondering if we should, are there any thoughts on how we divvy up the talks? So
well, someone at Weaveworks can't judge it. I mean, this is going to kind of sort itself out, right? Like if it's at Red Hat, we can't judge it. If it's at Weaveworks, they can't judge it.
Yeah.
You know, and everything else is kind of up for grabs.
I would expect the people who are with companies that submitted talks, or who have a conflict of interest, to be honest enough to step down from reviewing those talks.
Yeah. And
honestly,
I'm
with
okay
the
with
scale of event, I wouldn't bother with more kind of technical compliance in this area.
So yeah, so I would actually my question was more about, are we set? It says a minimum of 3 members, but so like if some get reviewed by 3 members and others get reviewed by 4 members, wouldn't that skew the number? Wouldn't that skew their score? So I guess what I'm asking is, are we saying 3 members?
Are you saying 3 members only? Yeah.
Only, okay. Yeah, or is I guess here it says a minimum of 3 members. I think maybe we should actually decide on like, yes, your score is based on 3 members.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, I'm sorry, Scott. Scott's hand's raised.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Real quick. Is the idea how to keep this fair, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
That's the genesis of my question. Yeah.
Right. And what I've heard so far is that I think it depends. Possibly our process might depend on the number of submissions. If there are, for example, 10 submissions, I can read all 10 of them. There are 50 submissions, we might want to divvy this up, you know?
And the reason I pointed out 3 members is because I think it's a good starting point. In other words, I think anything below 3 members is not fair. Of course, a single review doesn't go. 2, there is no kind of like breaking in consensus. You know what I'm saying? 2, I think 3 is likely the minimum number to get a fair, just average across multiple perspectives. Anything below that doesn't work. That's when I said minimum. But I do agree with you, Christian, that if one CFP gets reviewed by, if one proposal gets reviewed by 3 and another one by all of us, that definitely will skew the score. So we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, so I guess
I think Cornelia's hand raised. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe
Yeah,
we're getting to that point.
Cornelia,
yeah, we might be getting to that point. And also, I can't see the everyone's screen at once while I'm sharing mine. So I don't know if Scott, if you want to handle the hand raising. You did such a good job yesterday that I'm
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. So Cornelia, then Shlomo.
So yeah, I wanted to make a couple of suggestions. So I've learned a lot. I've been on the programming committee for the DevOps Enterprise Summit, where we get hundreds of submissions and have a programming committee about the same as the size of this one. And so a couple of rules I think that are super helpful is, first of all, I don't have any objection to there being more than 3 reviews. And I think that that's fair. We're going to average. So it's not total score, we have to average across that. So we can make up for the difference in 3 versus 5 or something like that. So I wouldn't want to constrain that. The second thing is that we have a similar rule, slight variation, where we say any talk that ends up with an average of, and our average is the system that we use, you end up, there's 3 different criteria, but then you end up with a score from 0 to 5. And so we have a rule that says any talk that is a 3.5 or higher, which is kind of the minimum bar for, like, if you can't get a 3.5, then you're probably not, based on the number of slots that we have and things like that. That's the one that must be reviewed by a minimum of 3 people. And every talk must be reviewed by at least 2 people. And so as I'm saying that out loud, I'm realizing that's probably more complex than we need here, because I don't anticipate that we'll get 300 or 400 submissions. So all of this is to say, I like the rule of a minimum of 3. I think that we do an average. The last comment that I'm going to make, though, is that I had been on the programming committee for some W3C conferences, which were blind. The system was set up so that you couldn't see who was presenting. You couldn't see, you were based on the proposal alone. And the first year that I did get DevOps Enterprise Summit, I did that. I didn't look at who the submitters were and things like that. And then I realized over the last several years that there's a lot of value in that. It's like, we want to hear from the large organizations and their experience reports. And so there is relevant criteria there as well. And so all of that is to say that as a programming committee, I want to balance, I want to be fair, full stop. I want to be fair. We aren't going to be unfair, but we are responsible for programming a kick-ass event. I'm sorry if that offends anyone. A kick-butt event. We are responsible for creating a fantastic program. And so it's okay for me, for example, if we end up selecting something that ends up with an average score of 3.5 over something that is an average score of 4.5, because there's some criteria that will make it a better event. We already talked about one of them. This talk's already on the KubeCon agenda. So let's make room for this other talk, which is really going to enhance our schedule and enhance, the program that we put together. So let's be fair. Let's have rules to help us be fair. And then let's also remember that the goal is to put together the best program we can. And so we will make some flexible decisions as well. So long as we're calling each other on biases and things like that, I think it's safe to do so.
I'm good with that.
Cool. Thanks, Cornelia. Shlomo.
And yeah, Christian, if you could head over to the GitOps submissions tab on your shared screen.
You got the spreadsheet open.
On the left.
Wow, he knows your computer better than you do. That's pretty scary.
Oh no, this is something else.
Okay, Okay,
I thought-
let me
I thought it
quickly
was-
share my
Quick
screen. Will
conference.
be
Yeah,
easier.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not allowed to share, so
Oh,
no.
1 second, please.
I could stop
Oh yeah,
sharing.
you should be allowed in
Yeah,
the security
turn that.
settings anyway.
now I can share.
Okay.
So what I did is while we were all talking,
Sweet.
I went
Yeah.
ahead and I set up protection on the raw data so that nobody would accidentally change it. If like go here and change it, there comes a warning that says don't do that
Nice.
and gives you a chance to bail out. And I created a sheet called review, which in this gray area, which I actually forgot, I have to protect it as well. Which here, just a second, we'll have the same warning. So in the gray area on the left, we have just the raw data mirrored, but without personal information. So that it's the actual stuff that we should be reviewing initially. And I created a little table where you can now put some grades here, like, I don't know, 4, 1, 5. Yeah, like 4, 4, 4. I think you get the idea. And I just realized that here we see a bit too much. So let's reduce that to something like that. And now we get here the result. And I hope that will help us to settle the whole topic. And even if we now decide on a different way of scoring or doing or whatever, this is really quick to change. Like,
This is
no big-
awesome, by the way. Yeah.
Yep.
so
great, Shlomo.
if you have any wishes, what I should be changing here, just tell me. There's a bit more to that. Here's a total, which I was just about to do. Here's a column for KubeCon repeat. And my thought was that here in the last column, we can put some reasoning thoughts or whatever notes we want to keep for ourselves about this talk. I don't know. Special minority speaker, we should take it nevertheless. Or I know him, he actually doesn't speak English. What should we do? I don't know. Yeah, whatever notes we should take into consideration. And then we can add further columns on demand. So the question is that something workable? Cornelia, what do you say?
Yeah, I think it looks great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for this. This is actually
Yeah. this is cool.
wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
This actually answers, there was a few questions I had. This actually answers like most of them, like, because I'm more of a technical guy, like how technically are we going to do this? But I think this is great.
Now, one quick question is that you've made room for 5 reviewers.
Well, initially I had 3, and then you said, well, maybe 3 isn't enough, so I quickly added 2 more.
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether yeah, I think that's fine. What I was going to say is, do we want to have a column for each individual?
Yeah, that's what I
So
would,
Cornelia's relevant score, Shlomo's relevant score, Scott's relevant score.
We can
Yeah,
do
I like
that.
that. I like that. How many is it? How many are we altogether?
Exactly.
8?
How many are we?
I think
There's
it's
8
8.
of us on the
Yeah.
call.
Oh, sure. I can add 3 more. I found out that this is really easy.
there is also one other person who's not on this call who had initially set out or who had volunteered to do that I will check in with them.
Okay.
So we need 4 more altogether, right? Is that correct?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yep, I think
Yeah.
so.
This formula survived. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll fix the formulas later. So we want to have altogether 9 slots for reviews.
I guess like, yeah, because it'll
Should
be
we just
per
put
name, I
people's
guess, right?
names?
Yeah, that's I think that's what Cornelia is saying. Is like just it's I think he has placeholders for now, but it's just
Yeah.
that'll be a person's name in each.
Right. And it doesn't mean
Yeah.
just because your name's on it doesn't mean you should grade it, right? Like check for
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
the bias criteria. Yeah.
Because it might do
And then
you
people
good,
can
Chris.
use the comment. They can stick a comment into the cell
Hmm.
if they want to say, I think this is particularly relevant, or this is totally irrelevant, or something like that. Some comments that even I find that making the comments reminds me when I go back, like when I thought through this, why did I score it this way? So I find that helpful.
Okay, so we said we want to have 9 slots. I'll be fixing up the table in a moment. Anything else
Yeah.
you want to hear?
Okay, that sounds good for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
this
For
is
now,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is good.
So I added
We can
that-
do it just in time, but while you're editing it, I think a column for accept, reject is helpful. And one of the other things that I want to circle back on is that I think that having interaction with the submitter to help them refine. So one of the things that we do fairly frequently is when we find that there's 2 people from the same company, for example, that have submitted talks and they're closely enough related, we might circle back with them and say, how about you do a joint talk? Or they might be across 2 different companies. And, how about if you bring a business leader with you to this? I don't think that's relevant here, but this is the type of thing that we do as well. So as we go through and evaluate these things, I think it's fair for us to circle back and request more info. Like, I wouldn't say take a super thin abstract and do a lot of work to figure out what did you actually mean by this. But if there's some follow-up, some dialogue we want to have with the submitter, I think that's good too.
Yeah. I pretty much expect us that once the date is over, we will send out an email with like BCC to all the submitters, letting them know that we actually got their talk and that we're now going to look at it, and also ask them to submit further information. And then but also give them a very short deadline, let's say from Friday till Sunday or whatever, to please submit that information. And then we can ask, for example, about if it has been accepted at KubeCon, if it's a repeat talk that they gave already 20 times, stuff like that. And also like how relevant are the GitOps principles to their talk? Because that's actually the one item in the review criteria that I personally was missing. Because I don't want to have talks actually that come and tell, well, we do GitOps, and then after the talk we all say, well, this was a CIOps bullshit.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sugarcoat
exactly,
it, right? Like, come on.
Sugarcoat it, Shlomo.
Yeah, sugarcoated. No, well, I mean, I think everybody.
I agree with you.
CIOps talks out there, and I don't think we need to have a conference that will show more CIOps talks, unless it's a talk that spends 2 minutes on explaining why their old CIOps setup wasn't good enough, and then explaining how they rebuild that into GitOps. Sorry, I'm hogging the meeting.
You're fine.
So I just raised my hand for this. Quick 2 cents is that, as we've said before, I personally want to be cautious about. I mean, look, we have a process set up to help average our biases, right, and to help keep each other accountable on things that that could be biases that shouldn't be averaged in. So it's good. That's what the process is for. As far as criteria goes, in terms of GitOps, I like what we're hearing. We want to help put on a good conference that actually represents what GitOps are, what GitOps is rather. But I just wanted to note that a couple of things we said in the past is that even when writing the principles or like refining the principles, I know there are earlier versions of these, but refining the principles for the working group, we've noted that GitOps is a journey and that it's progressive. And so
Mhm.
it's going to be very unlikely that, well, I don't know. I can imagine it may be unlikely that all of the proposals will follow exactly these principles that are set forth, which we have not actually even released a version of from the working group. So I think it could be something that we bear in mind, but I just wanted to note that I thought perhaps we should keep all of that in mind as well and be kind to us, each other and everyone.
Totally agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, Leo had his hand raised there.
Yeah, I just want to kind of like echo what Scott said, because I think part of the whole exercise here is to also understand exactly what GitOps means in the wild, you know, and how it's being applied and how it's being understood, because it's still in flux, it's still being defined, and it should be defined in a way that incorporates what the real use cases out there really bring forth. So I think I just want to kind of like resonate to what Scott said. I think we want to be open to. We want to be open, period. Not. I mean, of course, within the context, not for things that are completely off subject, but we want to be open to different interpretations of the concept.
We have an agenda. How do we feel with this part of things right now? I put some notes under Christian's criteria note, and then I just put another note under processes and wrote down a few things that people said. I might have missed some things. Right now I missed some things. Then we have another couple of items on the agenda. Should we get to those, or do you want to revisit the agenda real quick to make sure that we are on track with our last 20 minutes? I don't want to take away from this. This is very useful.
This is very useful. I don't I think a lot of this I think we actually talked a lot about this. I don't know if we want to continue on this track or wait for it for the next sync up. I do want to talk about the timeline that we have for voting, because it's a very tight timeline, and the timeline is essentially we close the CFP. There's 2 weeks, and then we have the event. So we need to not only vote, but vote in a way that gives people enough time to do recordings if they're going to do recordings, and get their content together if they're doing it live.
About the recordings question, can we actually handle recordings from a tech perspective?
What do you mean?
Yeah. Oh. Yes. So are you talking about the platform that we're using?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. We got HopOn, right? That Chris, do you know if that handles recording? You're on mute, by the way. Chris.
You're muted.
Kids talking in the background. So the platform should be able to allow folks to upload videos. I think Aubrey and us, I think it was Aubrey and Christian, we were discussing like upload versus live kind of deal, and it can do both.
Okay.
I can double check.
Isn't Shlomo asking of whether the kind of like presenter would be able to kind of like log into HopIn and use HopIn as the recording mechanism? So that
no, that would not be the recording mechanism.
Okay, because I think the whole idea here is that most of these things are going to be pre-recorded. Matter of fact, I think all of them are going to be pre-recorded. So either we give them some tool that they can use to record, or some instructions that somebody I think already linked in the document that's shared, some best practices, but they're going to have to kind of like record it and put it somewhere, right? And that's going to take time. And I think we in the kind of like estimated timeline that I added to the document, I think we should leave some buffer for requesting redos. Like it doesn't happen automatically that video comes out perfect, and people might struggle. So we might need to kind of like circle back and say, you know, you gotta redo this because it's not good or whatever.
Talked with the lighting just like this, and no one said it's terrible. So
Tough, man. It's tough. Like
I know. It's everything. But it's a good point. Yes, there might be some redos or requests for redos. Which at that point, I would wonder if somebody does a redo, or we request a redo and somebody rejects it. I'm assuming we thus reject the talk.
Or we could help them out, because for instance, I did a talk that the way that they recorded was they actually just brought me into a Zoom call and they recorded the Zoom call. So if we do that, we could kind of like help them out and avoid the kind of like round trip latency of having to request a redo,
Right.
and just say, hey, you know what, your likeness is no good. You cannot go ahead like this and not waste time if we wanted to coordinate recordings with them.
That got suggested for the last talk that I did on video as a means to get the recording done, and I guess that works for some people. They can just show up and we'll let them know that you need to change your lighting or whatever, and then
You know what that also simplifies? Like if they don't have a proper kind of like scenery behind them and they want to use a virtual background, it's a whole lot easier to like just add it to Zoom than it is to configure OBS to do virtual background and stuff like that. So
The one thing I've heard recently though is that Zoom, like recording locally, like just by yourself, I think has been like busted somehow. That's what I heard from Josh Burkus yesterday, I think. So we'll need to double check that that's still possible.
I did a local recording, and Cornelia has her hand raised, so just real quick, I did a local recording. I've done a couple last week or so.
Okay.
A matter of fact is I got kind of like the setup to do separate audio streams and whatnot, so that you could isolate the audio for the guest, quote unquote, and it
Mhm.
worked all right. I didn't have
Okay.
any issue.
Maybe
Go
that
ahead,
was a
Cornelia, sorry about
temporary
that.
bug.
So no problem. I was raising my hand because we only have 14 minutes left, and I think that we should bring the conversation up. I think that recording quality, Chris, you have an action item to make sure that recordings can be played and all of that stuff. I think that's good. Let's take that up in a subsequent meeting, maybe in more detail, to figure out how we're going to do that. Who's going to help them record the things? That takes people, producers, all that kind of stuff. But I want to circle back to you, Christian, which is, I think we should propose a timeline for voting amongst this group and kind of at least tentatively agree on that. I think that's important for us to do today so that we can all plan and make sure that our calendars are open enough so that we can dedicate the time to do the submissions. We can start reviewing them as they come in, but we should understand that timeline. And then I also think it's super important that today that we, at least at a high level, talk about the slot count. So that we know when we're doing reviews, are we accepting 4 papers or are we accepting 15 papers?
Right.
So that's an important criteria.
Would like to have a mock agenda somewhere in a spreadsheet or even in docs.
There
it
is
just helps us to kind of visualize how the whole event will look like, also including breaks, or maybe free form exchange slots or whatever.
Yeah.
So
So
Can we put that right into the same spreadsheet so we have a one-stop shop? I know I think there was a suggestion somewhere, but maybe we can pull it into the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
So
say. I estimated some time frames, kind of like walking backwards from the event, and they're in the document that is linked in the meeting notes. That I don't know if you can open it up, Shlomo, real quick, because I think Shlomo is the one that's sharing. Yeah, so that one. So if you go all the way up, so I got a CFP open and close. And then kind of like I basically took it backwards and try to allow enough time for dry runs and testing, how long we have to get the recordings, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of like just an estimate that I would like us to kind of like walk through.
I meant more like something
that's different than the slots. Yeah. But you're talking about timeline, which I think is, you're right. We should close on that as well. The timeline for reviewing submissions and stuff.
Right. So
Two
yeah,
topics.
exactly.
There's two topics.
Timeline and slot count are the 2 topics that I think we got to cover.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the deadline for the 21st, I think that's fine. I think the 21st is when we should I think I want to push it back a little bit. So from your agenda here, Leo, is actually like voting on the 1920 and like the 21st, those emails go out, right? Because the sooner they know about it, the I think the better. But I don't know if that gives us enough time to like decide. Because you got here deadline 21st and then email to presenters the 23rd. That gives them a week to not only do the recording, but to submit it and for us to push back if there's any issues.
Mhm.
Now,
would like
I
to maybe
believe that
tighten it
we as a
up.
committee, should see if we should calendar some time to get together like we are now to discuss, we've concluded our voting, and then we need to come together. I know we'll try to do as much asynchronously, but it will be so much more efficient if we can at least have a couple of meetings. So maybe that following Monday, Tuesday, we put two 1-hour blocks on the calendar for Monday, Tuesday.
Can we choose a different locale than United States if it's anyhow possible?
What do you want to select?
You mean
Something with a little bit less roundabout backwards to the
Like
front
UTF-8
formatting for dates and numbers and whatnot.
Yeah, put it wherever you want.
let's put it in EU somewhere, because isn't this
Yeah.
EU? This is
Yeah, it's the
KubeCon EU.
Exactly.
You had
Yeah,
Norway
Yeah,
there.
either
Recall.
Central
Like
European
Central
time
European.
Yeah.
or UTC, one or the other.
So as a local, I like Ireland because it's English but not American.
Not American English. Gotcha.
Works for me.
But it's GMT +1, right? That's the time zone.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Central European time.
Central European time.
Yeah.
Hey, my hometown.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you
it's our
go.
it's our time, Shlomo.
Yeah.
It's our time to shine.
Okay.
Believe as well.
So I can happily build a kind of dynamic schedule here where we put a start time and durations and everything else will be calculated, so that we can use this
Sounds
as
good.
a planning document.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
that's a good idea. I can put in I'm still trying to find the link to the spreadsheet. If someone could put in the chat, see what happens first. And if
I put
find
it in the
by email-
spreadsheet. I put it in the chat.
Oh, you put it in the chat, yeah. I can outline the rough agenda because we have the planning committee meeting on Thursday. Oh, there we go. Review worksheet. Got it. Thank you, Shlomo. I can just essentially just paste from there to here. But it looks like if you could do the formulas, I can try to copy some of that over. Let me try to find that sheet as well.
Just a quick question around HopIn. Is HopIn kind of like just one single stream where we stream the recordings back to back, or is there some action that users have to take to switch between one and another?
So I've not gotten into HopIn yet, but the way all of these platforms typically work is that there's a producer behind the scenes doing all the switching, right? So
Okay, because the reason I'm asking that is to determine whether we want to kind of like organize talks back to back, or whether we want to have some buffer between talks so that people can actually go and do whatever they got to do. So for instance, in Vebi,
from that perspective, it's a single pane of glass.
it's
right?
a single, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, because we're not having like multiple tracks or anything, which HopIn can do. But since we're single threaded, it'll all just be one.
It'd just be one, yeah, because for
simultaneous.
instance, Bevy, if you have multiple talks,
Right.
you would go in a talk, even if it's in a single track,
Mhm.
and once the talk is over, you have to exit your current kind of like
Yeah, I wasn't
video
happy when they chose
and
Bevy.
go to another one. So that was very painful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think HopIn is, I mean, I can ask, I can double verify. I still need to get into it, to be honest with you, to make sure I can do everything I need to do.
Okay.
in it. But yeah,
Got it.
I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Okay, so we can assume kind of like back to back is good. It's
Mm-hmm.
just could just be a no buffer between talks.
Okay.
I mean, unless we have some like sponsors or something we want to
cool.
like
I see what
shout
you did.
out. Yeah.
So here's the formula work. You can now, like, don't change, like you change the start time and don't touch the other times, and then you just add the durations you want to have, and everything else will be calculated.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, I'm playing with it
Yo,
right
that
now.
is
so you see.
that is some
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheeting
Yeah.
awesomeness.
Yeah,
Cornelia.
that's really
He's our
cool. Yeah.
power user.
Oh, actually,
right.
I'm not. As you could see, I also had to look up how to do that trick. I'm just very lazy, so I try to avoid manual labor.
That's right. Isn't that what?
Cornelia has her hand raised.
Yeah.
right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't see that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So since we only have 5 minutes left, I did want to jump all the way down to my last thing on the agenda, and that is invited talks, ? I have one in particular in mind, and I would love to hear if there's any objections. I would like to invite a talk from the CDF, probably from Tracy Miranda directly,
Guys,
because obviously, go ahead, Shlomo.
CDF is for sure not the Colonial Defense Force.
Oh,
Who knew?
Continuous Delivery Foundation.
Ah,
Continuous Delivery Foundation. I will spell it out. And so I would like to invite Tracy to be an invited talk, to really just bring the communities together and to show that, really to have her talk about what GitOps means in the context of the CDF, and her intention, her desire to have our communities work together. So I would love to have that as a 15-minute. Okay, I'm seeing lots of plus ones. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I will send a note to Tracy.
Yeah.
What happened?
So Christian, do you want to push back the date to the point? Oh, you already did. Oh no, the kind of like emails to presenters to the 21st, kind of like condense the
Or at
timeline.
least, so I want. Yeah, so maybe, and we only have like 3 minutes left. Maybe we can start the next time we have this meeting with this topic. But
Okay.
we do need to block off, at least in our calendars, time to do the voting. Dedicate our time, right? So I'll dedicate 2 hours of my time Monday, 2 hours of my time Tuesday, or however long, right?
Right.
And then maybe do a meeting on the 21st to kind of just maybe finalize everything, and then send the email out either on the 21st or the 22nd. I think that's my proposal.
Okay, that's cool. And by the way, one thing that Philippe mentioned on Slack that I think is very valuable, the selection guidelines and selection criteria should be publicly exposed to those that are participating in the CFP. So as soon as we kind of like nail this down, we should put them somewhere so that people know how they would be. I agree with Philippe. I don't know what the rest of the team thinks, but I think this is kind of like, this should be public knowledge.
It should be.
I just made a note under the processes section of our doc. Do we have any action items that are important to note before we wrap up? I didn't want to cut anyone off. I just don't want to.
I have a short question about the platform. Do I understand correctly that the platform will allow interaction between the audience and the speaker while the speaker's recording is running? So that we have Q&A and talk kind of at the same time, or how will this work?
That's a very good question. I don't know if there's a separate Q&A function or not. I'm going to ping Aubrey right now to see if I can get into HopIn.
Like if we do recorded talks, I think it would be really great if we could have this kind of parallelism, that people watch the talk and the speaker is free from talking so that he can actually focus on the chat that happens during his own talk.
I think we would have wanted to add a kind of like field to the CFP form saying, will you be available at a certain time to participate in that? Because when it's recorded, I don't think everybody would necessarily be available at that specific hour.
That's a good point.
Which is okay.
Personally, don't want to host a radio show that just plays canned music. So I would expect every presenter to be available at least during and a bit after his own talk.
Some might submit a talk that's and they're from a different time zone, so they might not be available due to several reasons. But obviously
I
we
wouldn't
should.
take them either, because if they would go to an on-premise conference, they would also have to be active at the
Yeah,
time zone of the conference.
I would say that that's like a selection criteria. Like if you're not available during your session,
Yeah.
wouldn't that preclude you from going, right? Like
why
don't
do
know.
you submit if you don't plan to be there?
Right. Like that's exactly right. Like I knew I was submitting to a EU time zone when I submitted my KubeCon talk, right? Like I knew I was gonna have to get up early that day. Makes sense.
I added that as an action item. I added 2 action items, so we can circle back on that. We don't have to wait until the next meeting to circle back. We can address this in
Yep.
Slack and email.
Yeah, we can do all this asynchronously. So whoever's not on the Slack, I think we're all are here. I think we can just do a lot of this asynchronously.
Are there any other important action items? I know there are other topics that could always be addressed, but any other
Just
action items?
just
that
a
wanna make-
quick note. Can you, Shlomo or Scott, add a link to this form to that same document, kind of like somewhere, so that we can have an easy way to find it?
You
Which document?
go
So
in the
to this
spreadsheet.
this spreadsheet that Shlomo is putting together. So like if we go to the meeting notes, just basically add
Gotcha.
the link to this form in the meeting notes so that we can find
The
it.
only question I have about this is that we don't want.
Oh, it's not public. It's not public.
Yeah,
yeah. Never mind.
I mean, the spreadsheet has permissions on it.
Bye, Cornelia.
So these are the
Well,
current permissions of the spreadsheet, and Leonardo is our guardian of these permissions.
Yeah, I do think that we should. I'm glad you mentioned that. I do think we should be clear that that this is to be made, or this is to be kept, between the program committee. If there's any reason to address it afterwards with someone, we can always do that. But yeah, that seems to be standard practice. Okay, well, we're 1 minute over. Was there anything else burning?
Yeah, actually, I have a wish for Leonardo. Could you please create a Google shared drive in your organization, put the spreadsheet and everything else in there, and make us a member of that?
Yes, that matter of fact is I already did that, but I don't know if you know, Shlomo, I was a little bit worried about moving the spreadsheet into the shared drive and messing the connection with the form. Do you know if that's
Ooh.
The ID of the spreadsheet won't change. I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, no, it's a unique ID per spreadsheet, like per
I guess-
object.
I guess we'll see.
right? So anyways, I have your consensus that if that thing breaks, we're all in it.
Let's put
together.
it like this. This is Google and not Microsoft.
Okay, well, I'll check out.
That's it.
All right, so I'll move it to the drive. I just put everything in there. Matter of fact, is this document the one that has the proposed timeline and selection criteria is already in that shared drive. I don't know if I shared the drive or the document with you all, but I'll share the drive.
Thank you.
The nice thing about the shared drive is you can set restrictions on that. For example, prevent download and further sharing.
Yeah.
So for the security minded, this actually provides a pretty good security envelope against accidental information leakage.
I have
For our
one thing
top secret.
I should mention very quickly. Tony Menzel added a note to this issue that I pointed out in the beginning issue 9 minutes ago that I just saw. Who said, "I'd like to once again offer my help reviewing CFPs. I did it in Slack some time ago, but I think it got lost."
Oh.
So that's there, and let's address that async.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have any change requests to the spreadsheet, feel free to ask me. I can always take a few minutes and tinker with that. Besides that, you all have permissions, and the restrictions are only set to bother you and warn you if you change something that shouldn't be changed.
Did actually, Scott, I'll ask you this asynchronously, and then so I don't want to take anyone else's time.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.